Sometimes we want the quick fix, or we want we start to see a little bit of change. Like, okay, maybe I can stop now. And it's like, no, that's not exactly how it works. You really got to keep going. If you want to, I usually use the expression, it's kind of like the unresolved issues that we have. It's like, imagine you have like a bag on your back, or you're dragging one like a sled, right? And it's full of bricks. And all the bricks are your pain and your trauma and your hurt. It's all that stuff that you never dealt with. And you might not notice it, but you're actually dragging it with you everywhere that you go, in every situation that you're in. The better way to deal with that is, I need to drop that stuff off, but I slowly have to work the process.
All right, so let's dive right in. Can you fully avoid being uncomfortable? Like, can you fully just never be uncomfortable?
Okay, great first question.
Right.
Can you?
Yeah.
Can you? Okay?
Mhm.
Yes, you can.
Okay.
You can. Better question, I would say, or maybe we add on to that, right? Should you? Should you
Ooh.
avoid being uncomfortable? No.
There you go.
No.
There it is.
All of us should not. Carlos has said it so many different ways. If you guys haven't heard in some of these calls, Carlos has done a really good job of making this point. We sit in those feelings. We allow ourselves to experience them even when they're uncomfortable. Both Carlos and I have touched on that, especially when it comes to things like relationships, right? When the fallout from them. Not just simply glossing over what has occurred because I want to get to the next thing, or I want to get to feeling better. We understand that embracing that bit of discomfort in sitting in those emotions is what's going to ultimately allow me to feel better down the road, right? But I can't skip past that part. Like, you've made that point before. I hope for those of you that have been on these talks before, you've heard Carlos say that before. So it's very important. We need to echo that same point. A lot of people do choose to escape. So let's talk to the men here.
Yep.
We tend to escape and run and avoid. But it's not because I think that we don't want to deal with our feelings. It's because we're raised in environments where it's so uncomfortable to ever embrace or address them that we largely learn to just escape them. That could be smoking, drinking, engaging in other activities that help us to not deal with those underlying root causes that make us feel bad, that make us feel down, that make us sad, that make us whatever those negative feelings are. And so it is possible, because if it wasn't possible, I wouldn't really need a job, because everybody would just run from their problems and everything would work. So the truth is, people can run, but eventually it will catch up with you. You probably will find that you're making a lot of the same mistakes, whether it be with friendships, family, romantic partners, all of the above. That's when we got to challenge ourselves and say, hey, I might need to try a different approach, because trying to just skip this part is not giving me any good result.
I love that metaphor you use of, like, hey, you can run and run away, but like, you probably still have like a rope attached to those problems. Like, they're literally they're literally there right now. And I see my friend Jackie on here. She's asking, how long should we sit in those feelings?
Good.
What would you say? What would you say to that?
No, it's a good question. So I would say it depends on the context of what it is that we're dealing with, right? So I'll give like a practical example. Let's go back to like a romantic relationship, right? So let's say you were in a situation where you were with somebody for a year or more, right? Pretty significant. We would consider that a more serious relationship. Is it reasonable that you should expect to feel better in a week? No. Is it reasonable that you should probably feel better in a month? No. The context of it is, it's going to be specific to you and the situation that you're in. But you got to understand that depending on what you're talking about, if it's something you've been struggling with for a really long time, do not set yourself up for disappointment by thinking that it's going to be able to be resolved quickly. Because very rarely is that the case. Sometimes it is small. Sometimes it could be relatively small. It could be me and Carlos are talking. I misinterpreted what he said, so I kind of got in my feelings a little bit. So I sat with it maybe for a few hours, and I was like, you know what? Let me call this brother and ask him what he meant, because I might be mislooking at the situation. I talked to him. He says, you know what, bro? I get where you're coming from. That's not how I meant it. Bet. Okay, cool. I need to check myself now. And now all those negative feelings that I had, we can put them to the wayside now. Now I don't even got to worry about them. We can just keep it moving. So it does depend on like the specific situation that we're referring to. So if you want to give like an example, like a little more of a caveat, we can go into that. But I would say it depends on how serious of the feeling we're talking about and how long you've been dealing with it, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And I also I want to like piggyback on what you're saying as well, because a lot of us get really attached to an expectation of time, and this is stuff that we have a hard time measuring, because like you say, RJ, like it's really going to be up to you and where you are in your own healing. So for us to like even start like, oh, like in a week I want to feel good, like that creating that expectation is basically like, just like you said, it's setting yourself up for failure. Because what if that week passes and you're still like struggling with those feelings and those emotions? So it's more about like literally fill them as long as you need, as long as you feel like definitely. And you'll be able to tell, like you start feeling the detachment. You start really noticing, like the outcomes that you're getting. You're gonna start reacting differently as well. So it takes time, and for everyone's different. Definitely don't compare yourself, and definitely try to move away as much as possible from expectations. It's basically pretty impossible to not have any expectations. That's what we do as humans. So at the end of the day, so at the end of the day, it's more about like, okay, being aware of the expectations you're having, and like making sure that you're not expecting anything from the healing. I to bring it back to a point that you brought up in the past, is it's like if you have a cut, again, like okay, I'm gonna heal right now. Like no, like it heal it at its own time, or whatever time it needs to heal.
Right.
And especially depending on how much time you're dedicating to the healing as well. Because if you're doing 1 minute of meditation every day, and you're like, I don't know why the 20 years of trauma that I had, they're not healed yet. Well, well, that's let's keep it real. Let's keep it real.
No, absolutely, man. I think that's so important. It's just, and I love that you said that. Like even when we just talk about expectations, right? To me, like when we talk about like sitting in the discomfort and embracing these things that we're uncomfortable with, I would almost say like I want us to not have any expectation other than I have to go through this journey, I have to go through this process, whatever that might entail. If I'm willing to commit to that process and really do what is going to be necessary, at the end of it, I won't feel like I feel right now. Like if we want to make it very, very simple, if I go through the process and I go through these steps, when I'm done, I am not going to feel like I feel right now. Maybe right now I feel like crap, or I'm sad, or I feel depressed, or I'm lonely, or I don't like the way that I look, or whatever the situation may be. But if I stay the course, I will be better at the end of this process. But like I like the example that you gave. Sometimes we want the quick fix, or we want we start to see a little bit of change. Like, okay, maybe I can stop now. And it's like, no, that's not exactly how it works. You really got to keep going. If you want to, I usually use the expression, it's kind of like the unresolved issues that we have. It's like, imagine you have like a bag on your back, or you're dragging one like a sled, right? And it's full of bricks. And all the bricks are your pain and your trauma and your hurt. It's all that stuff that you never dealt with. And you might not notice it, but you're actually dragging it with you everywhere that you go, in every situation that you're in. The better way to deal with that is I need to drop that stuff off, but I slowly have to work the process, little by little. I have to work to remove a lot of those stressors of what I'm facing, of what I'm dealing with. So the point is, with the expectations, let's keep those to a minimum so that we just focus on going through the motions so that way we can get through the process and ultimately feel better.
I love it. I love it. You got to do the work. In other words, you got to do the work. You can't microwave this process. I'm stealing your words from my past talk. You can't microwave it. You just can't. That's good. Like, I always use that now. I'm like, yeah, you can't microwave the process. Like, that's how it works. All right. So I think, yeah. All right, cool.
Are you reading the comment?
Yeah, I'm reading a comment real quick. I'll read it out. She says, if someone who's never, oh, you can read it too?
Oh, I can. If someone who suffers from depression feels he should hold on to sad feelings, for example, when he thinks of his parents dying. Okay. No, I mean, that would be, I would say, a normal experience. So let me add like a caveat there. So embracing uncomfortable also means that we want to experience real, valid emotions. If I lose a parent, right? Like I lost my mom when I was really young. If I lose a parent, that's a very reasonable expectation to be sad. Like let's be clear here. If I lose a friend, my pets, whatever, it's reasonable to be hurt. It's reasonable to be sad. It's reasonable to have low motivation, low desire to do a lot of the things that maybe we used to do. That is totally fair. When it starts to become problematic is when I stop living because of that event. I lose my mom, I lose my dad, I lose my brother. Is it traumatic? Absolutely. But I got to do my work. I have to figure out, not only reconcile how I feel about them not being here anymore, like we all have to do, but how do I learn to move forward? Because simply existing and surviving should be nobody's goal. That should be nobody's goal. I want us to live.
Yep.
And trust me, you're talking to somebody, for those of you that are watching, I've experienced a lot of loss from very early on in life. I've had to deal with this for a majority of my life, not because I'm an expert, but I understand that moments like Jackie pointed out, it will happen to all of us, right? So we have to find ways to learn how to cope with that. So if you're feeling sad because something happened to you recently, that is totally fair and appropriate to feel those feelings. But I also want us to learn and surround ourselves, like we've talked about before, with a good support system. So we have people to lean on, like, hey man, I need to get out of my house. I don't really have the motivation to leave. Carlos likes to go out a lot. I need to reach out to him because he'll probably help me get out of my own way and help me start to regain healthy functioning, getting back to living my life, not simply just being here.